In a 1996 Wired magazine article, psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi described flow as being completely involved in an activity for its own sake. The ego falls away. Time flies. Every action, movement, and thought follows inevitably from the previous one. What if the state of flow is a difference maker between recommending a game to a friend or never mentioning it at all? Could flow be the reason why you love certain game genres while your friends can't stand them? Is it because of the way you get fully absorbed in the experience with no concern for anything else? I remember in 2007 when my cousin showed me the Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare E3 trailer. I remember from that day forward, I basically played every single Call of Duty up into the present one. And during those times, I didn't have a thought on my mind besides those games. Staying up to 9 a.m. wasn't hard, it wasn't a chore. It wasn't a bad idea to stay up till the sun came up. Now I have no interest in doing that, but back then it was different. Life felt so meaningful because of those experiences I was having on just a base PS3. I didn't know what lag was, fast internet speeds, server tick rates, or anything like that. I didn't need anything else to feel complete. If meaning is a constant state of enjoyment and satisfaction with the moment, I think Call of Duty ticked those boxes in my brain. It had a sense of community, competition, progression, low resistance, and it was lazy proof. What I mean by that is I can turn it on at home in my boxers for free, didn't have to pay for online, just using a little bit of electricity and Wi Fi. I was good to go, I was up and running. In the book The Orchid Thief, Susan Orlean described the way I was feeling at the time so perfectly. I didn't know it, but years later when I came across this quote, it really encapsulated everything from that time period. The world is so huge that people are always getting lost in it. There are too many ideas and things and people, too many directions to go. I was starting to believe that the reason it matters to care passionately about something is that it whittles the world down to a more manageable size. The world in retrospect feels so huge. Content's overwhelming, the choices are debilitating, but it wasn't that much different in 2007. There was still a boatload of choice. It just wasn't thrown into our faces with endless scrolling and homepage recommendations and For You pages. It was there, but we didn't focus on it. You could have told me anything that was interesting in 2007 and I wouldn't have cared. Call of Duty was the sole steward of my feelings. Call of Duty owned my feelings. There was no cost benefit analysis or cost benefit analyzing my choices or how to spend my evenings. There was no opportunity cost or what if I played this game instead or what if I went out with my friends or what if I watched this movie. There was none of that. I was completely immersed in Call of Duty. If Mihai Csikszentmihalyi would have told me I was happy, I would have agreed with him. I knew I was. I didn't need him to tell me. Gaming was happiness back then. There wasn't a separation. I was completely locked in. Boredom wasn't a part of my vocabulary. I don't think I ever got bored, even though I was playing the same series for years on end. Sometimes when I play a game today, it just feels like I'm maybe trying to capture some of that lightning in a bottle that was those early years of Call of Duty. And maybe what makes a game meaningful is what makes a song meaningful for me, or the same thing that makes an evening with a friend meaningful. I think I've maybe been overcomplicating it. If my emotions, positive or negative, are intertwined with the experience, kind of like hair on a brush, then I don't think it needs to be more complicated than that. That was flow for me. That is flow for me. Being completely absorbed with the experience. I think talking about absorption, we have to mention speedrunners because they don't just play a game, they aim to master every part of it. Speedrunners are fascinating and should be studied more. Some speedrunners commit years of their lives to one game. Not without flow, of course. The best speedrunners in the world have to perform the right actions multiple times per second for sometimes hours on end, in the case of like a Grand Theft Auto 5 speedrun, for example. If we look to the speedrunning community, we get another angle on this truth. There's people who play the same game for years trying to beat their personal best and top the leaderboards just so they can be known for being the best in the world in a single player game. And they just have a community of maybe 70 people, maybe 5 people in some games, maybe 2 people in some games. I think if you put their brain under an fMRI, you would see the same activity that you would see in another person who is engaged in extreme sport, or another person who is just enjoying their painting or their creative work. There's people who do a speedrun of Mario 64 blindfolded. I think it's safe to say it would be hard to compete in an area like that if you were in a state of flow. Just because how could you not be if you're not even seeing the screen? You're literally just focused on your actions and visualizing the game at that point. If you think about the times in your life where you were completely immersed in a game, chances are you were tapped into that flow state. But is that the same thing as meaning? While they're two different things, they are close cousins. Some of the most meaningful experiences I've had in gaming came because there was no awareness of myself or surroundings. I was completely at the mercy of the game. Now, what happens when you chase the state? What happens when you make it a goal? What happens when you set out to find a game that's meaningful or that puts you in a state of flow? This is where it gets tricky because now you're turning it into a chase. You're turning an amazing state, this emotional state flow, into a chase, into a goal. Whenever I've tried to play a game someone else recommended me, or something that has done good at the Game Awards, or something that has a good Metacritic rating, and I go in with the intention to maybe feel this wide range of emotions and, come out saying it's a masterpiece, I always almost come out disappointed. But after years of making this mistake, I finally know myself a little bit more, and I tend to stick to experiences I know I'm going to love. Competitive shooters, for example. For single player games, I sometimes come across gems, but I don't expect to, and when they happen, it's really nice. I'll try everything, I'll play everything, but I don't have any hopes of getting something out of it. Of course, this is just my experience, and one person's solution is another's misguidance, so consider your own experience. But for me, I think knowing what I love and sticking to it 80% of the time and trying something new 20% of the time seems to work for me. If you're the type of gamer who plays for escapism, then this might not even be relevant, this whole video. If you're someone who just wants to kick back after work and play some games just to have fun, you don't really need to go deeper than that, then that's fine. There's no shoulds in life, you know? Flow might not even be a goal at that point. Maybe you just want something to play while listening to a podcast or music, something you can play while you talk to your spouse or hang out with your kids, whatever. At that point, flow wouldn't be an ideal state. You might literally just want something to do before bed, and that's okay. That's fine for you. Do whatever works. So what's the point of all this? Maybe I'm being misleading. Maybe there's no final answer to this, or else we'd all be in agreement and nobody would ever be bored ever again with a video game. But life isn't that simple. There's no answer to what makes a game meaningful, but the question of what makes meaning rhymes across all disciplines, across all leisure activities. It's perhaps easier to say what is not meaningful. When I'm speedrunning the weekly chores in my place, I wouldn't say I'm exactly, getting a sense of meaning from that. But perhaps being aware of your internal states is half the battle. Perhaps knowing if you're seriously not enjoying something is a small catalyst to maybe pivot and try something else. I know for me that's what finally guided me to a place where I want to be with games. A place where I can say I'm happy playing them. If you're in a state you want to be in while playing a game, you're winning. If meaning is a worthwhile goal to you, then pursue it. If a meaningful distraction is what you're after, that's fine too. Everyone's journey with a game is personal.